When Sauce Gardner left with a non-contact leg injury earlier today against the Texans, we saw the classic look backwards like somebody had kicked or hit them in the lower leg. But we'll talk about why, thankfully, it appears that Gardner avoided a more catastrophic outcome. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Brian Sutterer, and the goal on this channel is to teach you more about the medical side of the sports world. So let's talk about this non-contact injury for Colts defensive back Sauce Gardner. So we could see, everybody talks about whenever we see an Achilles or whenever somebody has an Achilles tear, it almost feels like somebody kicked them in the back of their leg. And you frequently see players look backwards. And we saw that here with Sauce. We see him looking backwards right here. And this was the step, this was the moment, probably right about there, that push off where he suffered this injury to what we've now found out to be a calf strain, and thankfully not a full-blown Achilles rupture, which would obviously be much more catastrophic. Sauce even said afterwards during an interview that he felt like he got shot in the back of the calf, and that's why you just instinctively see players look backwards like this. So of course the injury we since have found out is just a calf strain rather than an Achilles tear. And we'll talk about which of the two muscles we have to be concerned about between the gastrocnemius and the soleus, but the injury occurred here just in this position as he was pushing off. If we wind this back up a little bit, as he was backpedaling here, I wondered initially if maybe this move was when it could have occurred, but thankfully at this position, his calf was not in a maximally stretched position. So the gastrocnemius is what we call a biarticulate muscle, meaning it actually crosses two joints. It crosses the ankle joint and it also crosses the knee. The origin of the calf muscles insert up here on the femur above the knee. And so whenever your knee is fully extended, that puts more stress on the gastrocnemius. When your knee is in more of a flexed position like this, the soleus muscle, which originates on the tibia and sits just crossing the ankle joint only, is going to be under more stress. So if his leg would have been in a more extended position here, then we could have potentially seen more stress and when the injury would have occurred. But if we fast forwarded here, it was going to be this push off when there's a little bit more extension, a little more straightening in that knee, that load going through the calf, and we can see then him, of course, look backwards, being concerned about an injury. Going to our biodigital anatomy tool here, this is going to be looking at the back side of the calf. We're going to have the two muscle heads of the gastrocnemius. To rotate this a little bit, you can see what I'm referencing with how the origin of the gastrocnemius is actually up higher. If we get rid of our ligaments around the knee, the origin of the gastrocnemius is above the knee joint. And so it's going to cross the knee joint, and then it's also going to cross, of course, the ankle. So the medial gastroc is going to be the most common place where we'll see a strain. Of course, when we see a strain, that's a tear. That means that these muscle fibers have actually torn. And, we grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. Grade 1, maybe a little tiny stretch. Grade 2, more partial. Grade 3, a full thickness tear. There's better classification systems when it comes to calf strains where you can classify them depending on how much they involve this aponeurosis. So the aponeurosis is where the gastrocnemius transitions into the Achilles tendon. And depending on how much of this transition, this junction between the muscle and the tendon is injured, that can make them a much higher grade. So it's a little bit more complicated than just grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. I think thinking of it as mild, moderate, or severe is more appropriate. But remember, a strain is a tear. And so with Sauce, as he was pushing off here, that puts stretch on the gastroc, on the Achilles. The muscle in this case was the weaker part of the kinetic chain, which is a better scenario than the Achilles, tearing in those muscle fibers, and we saw him leave the field. So what do we expect? A calf strain, even though it's not as serious as an Achilles rupture, can still be a very long-term injury. The least severe ones where you hear about somebody having some tightness, getting an MRI, finding a strain, maybe a week or two. More moderate, you're going to get in maybe 2 to 4 weeks. But a higher grade calf strain can still be a month plus injury. We've seen some players, Karl Anthony Towns in the NBA, miss like 2 or 3 months with a calf strain. So while it's not as severe as an Achilles tear, this could still potentially be an injury that could keep Sauce on the sidelines for a month, 6 weeks, potentially longer, just depending on his rehab. So yes, seems like he's avoiding anything surgical, but still at this point in the season, a serious enough injury that if it is a higher grade tear, could have him out until early January, potentially first round of the playoffs. That's it for the video. Let me know as always any questions or comments down below. And until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.